This video demonstrates how to make and bake a quiche in the oven. Making quiche is the vehicle for pupils to demonstrate several food skills, such as measuring, sifting, rubbing in, forming a dough, rolling out, lining a tin, whisking, grating, cutting, and using an oven.
Grease a 20 centimeter baking tin, for example a Victoria sponge sandwich tin. Rub a little fat around the tin or use a brush. Prepare the ingredients and get the equipment ready.
Jars of oil and brushes can be shared. Sometimes a round piece of greaseproof paper is placed on the bottom to ensure that it does not stick. Some schools use disposable foil trays so that pupils can take the quiche directly home. It also saves time washing up during lessons. Others use a baking ring on a baking tray so that the quiche can be more easily released after baking.
Preheat the oven to 200 degrees C or gas mark 6. Sift the flour into a bowl using the side of your hand to help. Then add the pieces of cold butter or baking fat to the flour. Coat the fat pieces in the flour. Using the tips of your fingers and thumbs, gently rub the fat into the flour until it looks like breadcrumbs. To keep the flour cool and light, lift the flour up above the bowl when rubbing in. Gently shake the bowl from time to time to see if there are any large lumps.
The food skill rubbing in is used in many recipes such as crumbles, pastry, rock cakes, and scones. Using fingertips means that less heat is transferred to the butter or baking fat. Shaking the bowl brings any large lumps to the top, then rub these in. During rubbing in, the fat coats the flour particles and reduces the amount of water which can mix with the flour, sometimes called waterproofing the flour. The plasticity of the fat allows the fat to surround and coat the flour particles. Proteins in the flour make gluten when they are mixed with water. Gluten is elastic and stretchy. When only a little water is absorbed by flour, less gluten is formed, and so the mixture is shortened. This results in short crust pastry. It has a crumbly, biscuit-like texture.
Once the fat has been rubbed into the flour and looks like breadcrumbs, add the water to form a dough. Make a well in the middle of the flour and add the water. Add a little to start. You might need to add more. If the mixture is looking too dry, sprinkle in a few drops of water. If it's too sticky, add a little flour. It's important to add the right amount of water to form the dough, so be careful. Start to combine everything together to form a soft dough.
Use a palette or table knife to bring the dough together at the start. This keeps hands clean, it is less messy, and less heat is transferred from the hands to the dough. If pupils need to add more flour, they should add with a spoon, not their hands or by shaking the bag into the bowl.
When you've nearly combined everything together, use your hands to bring the dough into a ball, moving it around to clean the sides of the bowl to form a soft dough. You have now made short crust pastry.
You may need to allow the dough to rest. If so, wrap in cling film and place in the fridge. If time is tight, the pastry could be made and frozen in one lesson and used in the next lesson to make a quiche, pie, or pasty.
Sprinkle a little flour onto a clean work surface and onto the rolling pin. Start rolling over the dough evenly. Use a smooth, sweeping motion in one direction only. Loosen the dough and turn it around by 90 degrees. You might need to use your hands to keep it in shape. Continue turning the dough, making sure that it doesn't stick and stays in a round shape. You may need to sprinkle more flour onto the rolling pin and work surface.
Ensure that flour is provided in dredgers or a little is given in small bowls. Pupils should not sprinkle from the bag to avoid a mess or use their hands for hygiene. Roll in one direction only to help stretch the dough uniformly. Turning the dough helps to stretch the dough in a uniform way. For certain thicknesses, you could use everyday objects as a guide, for example, as thick as a £1 coin.
Keep rolling until the dough is the thickness of a pound coin. Use the baking tin to check that it is the right size. Carefully place the dough in the baking tin using the rolling pin. Using the back of your finger, press the dough into the tin. Rotate the tin to press it all the way around. Using a knife, trim away the edge of the pastry. When starting, you might find it easier to trim the edge with the baking tin on the work surface. Using a fork, prick small holes into the pastry base. The lined baking tin is now ready to be filled.
Moving the dough with the rolling pin means that the dough should stay in one piece. Pressing the dough into the tin results in a uniform and straight edge. If the dough tears, press the dough together. You may wish to press the fork around the edge of the pastry to make an attractive pattern. Leftover pastry could be made into cheese straws or mini pasties or frozen for another time.
Beat the eggs in a bowl and add to the milk. Add the ground black pepper and mix everything together thoroughly. With the baking tin on a baking tray, sprinkle the grated cheese over the pastry base, then add the chopped red pepper. Lastly, pour the egg mixture over the cheese and vegetables. Using oven gloves, place the quiche into the preheated oven for 25 to 30 minutes until golden brown.
Beating the eggs ensures that the white and the yolk do not separate and that it is uniform. Vary the seasoning such as fresh or dried herbs. Ensure that pupils use oven gloves, placing food into and removing food from the oven. When heated in the oven, the proteins in the savoury egg custard coagulate, thickening and setting the mixture.
Remove the quiche using oven gloves and turn off the oven. Allow the quiche to cool slightly, then remove from the baking tin.
Top tips. The oven could be preheated before the lesson if time is short. Have oil readily available and greaseproof circles pre-cut if appropriate. Allow pupils to be creative using a range of ingredients. Check that pupils are using the tips of their fingers and thumbs to rub in. Roll out in one direction and then turn. This helps the dough to be uniform. Use everyday objects to help gauge the thickness of the dough. Tears in the pastry can easily be mended by pressing the dough together in the tin.